Let me know when.
There you go.
Okay. Well, hello, everyone. This is Workshops for Moms Sunday night panel. We meet once a month on a topic of interest to moms. And we get to have a nice interaction with our panelists and our audience. And there's also a replay. So if you aren't here in person, you can still see everything and get all the great information that we're going to get tonight. And it's our 1-year anniversary. So Workshops for Moms had our first big event a year ago on April 30th. So yay! It's exciting.
So excited to be part of this.
Right.
Yeah.
We all met at a women's conference for speakers and launched out. So it's been an exciting and a really busy year. Well, having this Sunday night panel comes out of our work together in trying to find a place where we can just kind of unwind at the end of the day, and choosing that was like, well, let's go at the end of the month. And then we start off the new month with some great ideas. So tonight, given that we're all coming out of a long winter, it's time to get out in our yards. And tomorrow is May 1. So May Day, beyond our weeding and our mowing, our mom expert panelists are here to give us tips for turning our yards into really family-friendly spaces that really nurture us. And getting outdoors is the theme tonight. And you'll be able to ask questions by raising your hand or putting them in the chat. Now, I want to introduce you to some really talented women who have green thumbs. I've already learned so much from them, and I have to tell you, I'm the Pitiful Gardener. Yep, I wrote a book about it. And, working with nature and natural things doesn't always come natural to us. And that's why we thought this would be really great to talk to women who are really good at this and can help us. I don't want to say that I do everything wrong in the yard, but, sometimes things just don't go as we would like. And we want this to be a really great experience for you and your family. So Patrice Porter is gardening grandma. She's a mother and a grandma, and you guessed it, an avid gardener. And she worked for 15 years with young children in the Play and Exploration School program, and continues to work with kids through her own Got Dirt Gardening for Kids program. Jenna Jockus is for Nature. She's a landscape architect and a nature play expert. She teaches parents, early childhood educators, and park designers how to create sensory-rich, nature-based learning spaces for kids. And she's the mom of 8-year-old twins. And Michelle DeKeyser is a mom of 3, a world traveler, and she's a former public school teacher. So she loves working as a connection coach, connecting not only moms to their passions, but making sure that families are feeling very connected. So welcome, panel, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank
Glad to be
you.
here and so happy to celebrate
Glad to
our
be here.
1-year anniversary. Woohoo!
That's so exciting. All right. Well, I'm going to start off with some questions, and we just kind of go around with everybody. I guess what I'd like to find out is how you ended up in your field. Why is that your passion? And you're really spending a lot of time now really working with parents and kids on this particular passion. And then, why is it important to you, how you ended up in that, and why it's important to kids. So who'd like to start here? Jenna, would you like to start off?
Yeah, that's a long story, Tracy. So how I got into landscape architecture was my mom, actually. Growing up, I was always the kid who was outside and the kid who'd run off from her at the supermarket to head to the plant section. And so my whole life I've loved plants. Have loved art. I've been good at art. And I was going to be a physical therapist or an occupational therapist or something like that. And she suggested I look into landscape architecture, and I had no idea what it was. And so, yeah, just got some career counseling and talked to some people, and that's how I ended up in it. But how I ended up in children's work was in my academics. So really early on in my career, it was in my master's work. I started playing around with playgrounds and outdoor learning spaces. And this was like 2004. And so not a lot was happening, at least where I was, as far as nature play. There was no term nature play yet. Richard Liu hadn't written his book yet. And so, yeah, I just, yes, exactly. That book. If had I had that in my master's work, it would have made my master's work so easy. If you don't have that book, you absolutely have to get it as a mom. It'll blow your mind. But so
title?
anyway,
It was
it was
back-
just, what's
What's
that?
the title, Jenna?
Last Child in the Woods. And he has written so many incredible books. He's a journalist, but he's
I'll give you
kind
the
of the,
subtitle here, Jenna. Sorry, I've just,
yeah.
it's interesting. Saving Our Children from Nature Deficit Disorder.
Yep.
My gosh.
Very interesting.
Yeah. That book has been such a game changer. And so, yeah, it's just one of those things when you start doing something and it feels like it comes naturally, that's kind of a clue that this, you need to be on that path and you need to be doing that work. And so really, when I started working in children's landscapes, I just fell into it and just ran with it. It is such a passion of mine.
So we'll come back and kind of with everybody, but why what you do is important to kids. But let me just pick up, since we just talked to Patrice here a minute. How did you get into your particular passionate field?
Oh, gardening. I've always had a garden of some sort, whether it was the family backyard garden, and I really am keen on being able to grow your own food, and it's something that's really served me well. And I love gardening with kids. It's that the wonderment and joy, and that sparks that in yourself too. And so, like, when I was working as an educational associate, and it was in a program that was very flexible, so we could do all sorts of programs with the kids. And I'd start little gardening projects with them, and it's just such a great connection between the two. And I was fascinated when I was working with the kids, like seeing the potential in the kids and being able to nurture that and watch them blossom. And so I was just fascinated by the potential of kids. So I wrote like a whole series of books, and volume 2 is bringing out the potential of children gardeners. And there's just so much other than just growing your own food that can come about from gardening. And being that, well, like this was my first medium. I loved the books for sharing your knowledge and expertise. And I brought in other experts too for that series on different topics. But then I fell into the love of the medium of developing courses. And I wanted something for getting the kids gardening. And so I developed the Got Dirt Gardening for Kids program, where so even if the parents don't really have an interest or don't have time, I built it for the kids to consume.
Oh, how interesting.
So that
Cool.
Yeah. So that like they have to be probably about 7 years old to do it on their own, and always with the encouragement that the parents should, join in. It's such a wonderful bonding experience. And with the parents, like they can just stay in the background, like let the kids do whatever they're capable of and just stay in the background and help them, where it's needed. But you'll be surprised of what kids are capable of.
Well, that's really
Yeah.
interesting. Just like Jenna saying she had such a draw to it. And I would say I don't, but maybe going at this level, but you're saying, kids can do it themselves. Well, we'll come back to that too. That's awesome. Michelle. Now,
I think
you
that's
really work with keeping families connected here.
Well, I think Pat just gave the perfect segue because my son took her program. And I have to admit, Tracy, I'm more like you as the Pitiful Gardener, and it's my husband who helps with the actual gardening part. But what turned me on to getting the kids out in nature and finding that connection was actually the same year that I homeschooled and did the 75 hard. Liam was taking Patrice's class, as well as part of my requirements of 75 hard was making sure you did one exercise outdoors every day. And just that feeling, and even no matter the inclement, cold, rainy, whatever, doing that really got me in realizing the power of being outside. And so wanting to make that connection for the kids and would then get me doing more activities with them. Like we go to Root River during our homeschooling and actually like work on around the lake. Even if they didn't want to walk with me, I'd walk in circles around them doing my 45 minutes. And then we'd be doing some kind of nature exploration or nature journal or something along those lines. But just that got me to see such the importance of nature and what it can do for us and really revive us. And it was also thanks to Patrice and my son, like, set that on and start doing the gardening, which they were actually getting the garden up today. We had to take it down 2 years ago, but someone else bought the land where it is. It's right by our house, but wasn't quite our property. And so they got the structure back up and they were kind of working on it. So maybe next week, we'll start planning some of it and stuff. And I want to get out there and help, but I'm more the watcher and the picture taker, and I'll help when they need help. But it's good to be there with them and observing it all. So I'm more here to show how we still can connect with nature, even if we aren't the best gardener.
Yeah, well, good. Michelle, I feel in company there. It's hard to be with these experts when you're feeling so about it, yeah, somebody
It's
had
more
written-
just seeing the importance of getting the kids outside, regardless of what necessarily the activities are. That's why I wanted to do this panel on terms, is to give, no matter what level you are, but to give you different ideas to and activities to get your kids outside and do them with them and enjoy it.
Yeah.
So let's
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that, because you've all have said, I've seen the importance of it, or I've seen the power of it. I mean, Michelle's seen it in her family. But Jenna, let's go back to, as a landscape architect, if you're having to convince people about this, they're going to spend a lot of money on transforming a public space or doing something like this. What pitch do you make to, like, why this is more important than just having the swings and the slides? And I have to say, our playgrounds have gotten so boring. Even the play equipment is boring because they're so worried.
Don't get me started on
that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's so much just in the last 15, 20 years, 15 years, 10 years. There's so much more evidence, like rigorous research studies that have been done that just support the fact that, what we already know innately, and that is nature is good for us. It's really good for our kids. But there are studies that show that just spending time out in green spaces alleviates some of the symptoms of ADHD. It helps kids be able to to regulate themselves in a sensory way so that they can learn, so that they can connect with others, so that their nervous system calms down and they can do all those things that they're meant to do. But when your nervous system is all amped up, it's like trying to do something, and your system isn't letting you. And so nature it helps for moms, for families, for children. It just helps calm our nervous system and get reconnected with everything again. It's just a balancing thing. So yeah, it's just so beautiful. And so, I mean, if we have a moment, I can tell a story that was told to me by the director of a nature center that really is one of the most powerful stories I've ever heard about kids connecting with nature. And so I'll make it as brief as possible.
Well, good. I want everybody to have a good story here.
Yes. So yeah, and I tell this as often as I can because it's phenomenal. So this was told to me a few years back by a woman who was a director for a nature center in the rural Midwest. And so this nature center was a popular destination for like school field trips and whatnot. So they had kids coming in and out all the time. Well, this one particular day, this busload of fifth graders shows up. And so they're like, 10 or 11 years old. And they come piling off the bus and the staff greets them and gets them into some nature activities. And so 5-10 minutes into it, the director's walking around looking for the teacher. And she kind of spies her off in the distance, and the teacher's just bawling, just crying. And the director's like, oh my God, what's happening? So she rushes over to her and says, is everything okay? I mean, you're upset. Is there something I can do? And she's like, no, these are tears of joy. And I always get like chills when I tell this. She said, these are tears of joy. I just had one of my students, a boy with nonverbal autism. Within about 5-10 minutes of being there, he walks up to his teacher and he says, the air is this is so beautiful here, and the air smells so good. And this is a boy whose parents had never heard the sound of his voice.
Wow.
And so you can see why the teacher is crying. I mean, I want to cry every time I tell the story.
Well, we work
And
with
so-
kids, we love them.
I know. And this is, children with autism, they may not always have the words, but the words are always in there. They are all, and there's, I don't know what it is, but this boy's experience, and I always say, part of it was his sensory experience with nature. That connection that was allowed to happen just opened that door, and these sentences flowed out, not just a couple words here and there, but I mean, he's verbal, he's got good language, and it was there the whole time.
Wow. It's
So
exciting.
yeah, it's really phenomenal.
Yeah, well, okay. We say like go to the park. Yeah. We always say to the kids,
Go
go
to the park,
outside,
people.
but we can enhance that experience. Patrice,
Mm-hmm.
do you have a story?
Yeah, it was, we were taking the grade 6s out on a field trip. Like, we're a forest community, and we're taking them out by the forestry station and into the forest. And it was so sad because the kids, all they wanted to do, they says, when are we going home? They
Ah.
just wanted to get back onto their phones. And like, I know as a child, like not their phones, but play their games, get back on their devices. And I know as a child, like my dad used to take me out with the Museum of Natural History for all these field trips. And I loved it when we could go and exploring in the forest or different things. And we'd have biologists there. And so we said, like, what's this? What's this? What's this? And the kids, like, they weren't taking in any of it, of what it was around, but so we carried on walking down the trail there through the forest. And then I came to some plants where the kids they're edible plants, like the wild mint and the nettles and the violets. And so I showed them, that you can eat this and smell this. And I told them the trick about, like, with the wild nettle, how actually it can, if you ever have bullies coming after you, you can take the nettle, just, grade 6s, so. So you can take the nettle by the, the end stem there. It's just the little hairs that are going to cause you this thing. And you can use that for a weapon if it's needed. And but so that caught their interest. It's something about kids and food, of course. It's and that's too, like, the way to get kids interested in gardening sometimes is let them taste that fresh garden food. And when they can go out and pick their own peas or carrots, like I used to love, like, just sending my kids out to get the dessert from the garden, from the raspberries or strawberries, or go get your vegetables, pick some peas and carrots, and it's just send them grazing.
Just send them grazing.
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
Michelle, do you have a story that illustrates how important it is
Well,
to be
speaking of-
outside in nature?
Speaking of grazing, that's what my daughter, the only thing she wanted to make sure that they grew is snap peas. She doesn't like to eat them, but if they're fresh from the garden, she loves to tell everyone, let's go have some.
Yeah. that is
But
true about
my
kids.
story is a little bit more simple because I wanted to get back to the basics a little bit, but I can think back to my homeschooling days and when all the kids, like all 3 of them, would just be at each other and stuff. And when we'd go outside to play a game and just do something outside, like, it never took that long for their mood to change quicker. But like if I stayed inside with them or we didn't do it, and so like we would just, especially when we're homeschooling, I know some of the homeschooling moms out there, just those ideas of purposely pick nature trails or things that we would do to get them outside and doing more things and have activities. And we even did we went apple picking, and what we turned it into a little project where we made sure, and I actually took little stickers and because I can never remember what kind they are, but then we put a little sticker on what each flavor was. And then when we came home, we got the whole family around the table and we put charts and stuff, and we like did a little tasting to see if we could guess what the apples were. And we had little charts and thing how we were saying. And so it's just fun to get these new ideas of how we could make this fun and yet still kind of learning and still doing our science and things and like that. But there's just so many ideas and stuff. And so that's kind of what I loved about this idea of the panel was just what are those ways in doing some new activities with them outdoors and bringing that to light, because it just does change, as Jenna was saying, their nervous system so quickly when you finally get them outside, because they're reluctant. And sometimes it's that huge fight and it takes like 10 to 15 minutes, but it's almost worth that fight, because once they're outside, they're like, I'm not coming back in.
And
Hopefully.
isn't that it's such a change? Because I mean, for my age, we were sent outside, don't come back till dark, and go amuse yourself. But I didn't even put my child in the front yard. And now, I mean, kids can't roam and do all the things. And yet you'd think they'd be antsy to get out, but you're saying it's hard. I'm guessing it's because of screens. Is that a fair assumption?
Well, it wasn't even the screens, especially with my kids aren't actually huge screen people, honestly, but it's more that they're just like the transition or the comfortable feeling, oh, I'm already doing something, or I'm already sitting down, or I'm reading my book, or like it's just that movement and that transition period. So I feel like, at least for my kids, but I do feel that the same of other kids is they do have that screen addiction, I would say, and they're just in that zone. I'm going to do this, and this is my time. But the fresh air, just there's so much more exploration and imagination that comes from it. I mean, one of the things my kids did is we are lucky that we do live by a mini forest, but they created a little teepee area, and they called it Kids Kingdom. So no adults were allowed over there. And so anytime that summer that they were doing that, any kid would come over, they would just keep building back there and adding to this. And then we would, never go close enough. We would never cross the barrier on purpose, just because they were so you could see everything was happening. So it wasn't a big deal, but it was just their territory, and they could call it Kids Kingdom. And no matter who came over, they'd be back there for at least an hour or so, adding to it and enjoying it.
That's so fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, my granddaughter too has her clubhouse outside, and her little nature stations where she's made her collection. And one thing that came to mind when we were talking about this, where the kids aren't often just let out to go exploring out in the wild and or being outside all the time, roaming wherever. And that was one thing, like with gardening, it makes for a safe environment and your nature play right in your backyard, so you can have it in that safer environment, and still the kids can be exploring and become fascinated by all the things happening in nature right in your backyard.
Absolutely.
So I've been hearing, and it's the name of Jenna's business too, nature play, rather than go outside and play. Is nature play something different than just going outside to play in the yard or going out to garden? How would you define nature play?
Yeah, so the term nature play is kind of a descriptor of a movement that's been going on for 20 or so years. So I would say, I mean, it's kind of going back to our roots, nature play, even in the 80s and earlier 70s, go play in a vacant lot, and you find materials to build a fort with, or you go explore the pastures and the woods and the creeks and that sort of thing. It was just the way people played, the way kids played. But now we're having to call it a name. So, it's kind of unfortunate, because, what we were just talking about, with the question of why is it so challenging for kids to go outside, or for us to go outside? And I think part of it is that we are more domesticated than we used to be. We have domesticated ourselves with convenience, with it, whether it's screens or whatever it is to make our lives easier. And it's just kind of taken the place of what we used to do, and that is to go be outside and to get our hands in the dirt as a daily practice. So we just need to find our wild selves again, and to do that, we got to be outside.
Well, so what would you
Right,
say to
Patrice?
people that live in apartments?
Yeah, well, you can find it everywhere. You can find it on your balcony if you get, some pots and herbs and bay trees and, whatever. You can create that, no matter where you are, whether it's indoors, you can still do these things. They're just a different scale, perhaps.
So
And it's that I found like it's that instilling that love of nature, like getting your kids, like get them, if you can take it, however, like my dad used to take me on field trips. We lived in the city and he would take me on field trips. And it was that activity, like spending that time, getting your kids out there and instill that love of nature. And you'll find as they're getting older and they're finding now, like they get bombarded with this climate crisis or environmental crisis,
Oh,
and it
mhm.
can be really overwhelming for the kids.
Mm.
And yet, if they've got that love of nature, they can let that love they feel start to direct their actions. So that then they see somebody's polluting the, throwing garbage around the creeks or something. And so, hey, let's get together and clean that up. And it's so like take them out, if it's walking around your neighborhood and see if you can identify some of the different plants and go foraging in your neighborhood. You just have to be careful, that if areas have been sprayed or if there's a
Yeah.
lot of traffic, you don't want that pollution there. But really, that's a gift that you can give your child if you can instill that love of nature in them.
Yes.
Well, I do have a
absolutely.
niece who they do go foraging in the neighborhood, but you have to, I said, you should write something about that neighborhood foraging, because what's safe to eat and what's not, I wouldn't know any of that. At all.
Well, it depends on the
Well,
neighborhood
there's a
too.
lot of
But
information out there, but yeah.
Yeah.
but what
So
I was
funny
going
you
to
mentioned
say,
it.
I was going to say, it really does come, as Pat was saying, but like put in the words, it's intentional. It's like putting that intentional love and being intentional about it. And I think that's what it really comes down to. It doesn't matter exactly how you do it. It's the intention behind it and making that connection. So even for those moms that might not necessarily feel it, it's sometimes that brainstorming it, maybe coming up with your bucket list with your kids of how do we get back to nature and making it them coming together to be a project. And that's where the connection comes in and really making those in connection with each other, because you don't have to do all the things. Like if you're not a gardener, it's not that you have to garden to get back into nature, but find the things that you do like to do together and make that your list. And then use that for your summer activities. If you want to go do scavenger hunts together, or if you want, go on walks or find different hiking trails you want to go on, but start generating that list together and create that bucket list and plan that into your summer schedule, because you're going to have this time that you want to fill it intentionally. And that's what it really just comes down to, is getting out there with the intention of let's get back to nature.
Mhm.
So if you were wanting to transform your yard a bit, that can feel very overwhelming for people who do not have an innate garden knowledge. I mean, we are not taught gardening in school, and we see it all around us, and we see people who can do it. And then you go to the garden center and you do feel like everything there should grow. But how would you give us, and let's talk even about moms who are having a lot to balance and want to do something like this. Where would you advise starting? What's an easy place to start, and maybe even inexpensive? If we can't have a landscape architect come in and redo the yard for us, what could we do to get started? Maybe we're now finally, we've got some good weather ahead of us.
I always recommend that have your dream garden or your ideal garden, how you'd like it to be. That's going to be your destination. And then you start to step up, you start to create the stepping stones that's going to get you there. And the stepping stones, each one is just a small project. And start off small, because it's so easy to get overwhelmed. And I know I've done that to myself. lots of times. I get carried away. I went to a herb conference once and I had this big idea. Okay, and I bought this cookbook, Cooking with Healing Herbs, and I was going to get, grow all these herbs, and I was going to pick new herbs each day to try with these different recipes. And so like by the time I grew a lot of different herbs, and I plus on top of my gardening. And so by the end of the day, well, by the time it came to making a meal, it was like, I'm too tired. I'm just going to stick to my old, staple recipes and get a meal on a table. But if I would have just picked a few herbs, focus on that, get them established, and then you can always expand, add in, and go from there. So that's working.
Yeah.
And then you've got your steps to how to get you to where you want to be. And if there's any gaps, you do your research to fill those in, and it adds a lot of clarity. And
What do you think is the easiest thing for kids to grow or in a garden if you can't pay attention to it all the time? And then there's of course the ones that are going to get overwatered and all this stuff. What's the easiest thing for people to grow coming into spring and summer?
well, the quicker growing ones, but find out what they want to grow, what they like eating, what it is they want. Like you've got to tweak their interest.
Yeah.
Get them interested in something so that and find out what they want to grow, that they'd be willing to put the effort in to grow. And like, it doesn't have to be like your flat row garden or whatever. Like I had my niece wanted me to teach my grandnieces how to garden. And she says, she was just saying, well, teach them how to garden. And that's boring to kids, and most people think of it as a chore. So I asked them, I said, what type of garden do you want? And my one grandniece, she says, I want a Halloween garden. And I said, okay. And there's these white skin pumpkins. They're called Lumina variety. So I said, you can grow ghost pumpkins, and they look like just ghosts in the pumpkin patch. And then she said, I want sweets for my garden. And I said, okay, well, you can have the stevia plant. I had a stevia plant growing, which is 10 times sweeter than sugar. So I made some cuttings off of that for her garden. And she said, I want a black cat silhouette, and black cat in her garden. I had a black cat silhouette carved out in wood. So she had her black cat. And then we got the orange and black themed flowers to finish it off. And, so it's
amazing.
And Tina, I'm sure she's got lots of fabulous ideas for.
Yeah. Well, to tag on to what you said, Pat, herbs are the easiest thing to grow, but they don't often have flowers, and they're not that interesting, for kids. And so exactly what Pat was saying, ask them what they want to grow. Do they like cherry tomatoes? Those are super easy. And so maybe to play off the Halloween garden, what about like I've heard before pizza gardens. So maybe you have some cherry tomatoes and some chives and some basil and maybe some oregano or something like that. So yeah, sunflowers, super easy. And you can maybe plant those in a little ring if you've got a tiny little nook in your garden or in your landscape. Maybe you can plant a little semicircle of sunflowers that can grow into a little sunflower house. And so that's fun to watch. And kids, they love planting those seeds. They grow quickly. Those flowers are they're just so easy to connect with visually. And then to be a child to play within one of those things is really magical. And I love the idea as Patrice was talking about the Halloween garden. What if you had some little gnome statues or fairy gardens that you could, if you had this pot of herbs or whatever, you could just populate it with some things that are playful for the imagination. And then kids are out there and there's multiple things to do. They can pick some basil or whatever tastes good to them, and eat it, graze while they play. I love that concept. And then they have these things that they can, engage their imagination with. And these things can be done so easily in pots. Really the thing would just be to monitor the watering,
Well, I have a little spin on your guys' idea for
Mhm.
my son, who thanks to Patrice had already started to grow a lot of different things, but all of a sudden we had actually got a VIP pass last year for an entrepreneur summit and had just kept the videos, and I've been trying to work with him after school to do something, and we've been doing this memory book, and finally said it was too big. But he wanted to go back and watch the summit. And in the summit was a video for kids on how to make their own microgreen and sprout business. So
Oh,
he got really intrigued by the idea of being able to create his own business. And so the microgreens he hasn't been as successful with yet, but he started growing these sprouts. And so for Easter, we had a neighborhood Easter egg hunt. And he actually knows me. I didn't actually realize he had done all this, but he had taken like all our old raspberry containers and stuff and put sprout samples in these containers with a label on them and passed it around to all the neighborhood moms at this Easter egg hunt. And I didn't, like he said he was going to do something along those lines. I didn't realize how extensive it was, but it was all his idea. Like I honestly didn't even know that he actually had all these little containers and he was passing them out to everyone. And then the next day, even one of the moms sent a picture of her salad with the sprouts on top of it and saying how great it was.
Oh, cool.
And so it's just giving them new ideas, I think, is what it's all about. And just exposing them to different things that's possible when it comes to different things. And so looking at their motivation as well. So like if some kids want to like earn money or do something, like giving them just different avenues to start something and inspiring them to get away from the screens and think about the bigger picture. I mean, and he may or may not do this this summer, but it was just a good process for him to see how it all worked.
no, that's awesome. I was thinking my granddaughter got inspired because my great niece picked seeds from a flowering plant. I mean, a flower that I guess was probably easy to grow, and was selling them online. And she's a third grader. So then my granddaughter said, do we have anything like that? Well, we happen to have hollyhocks or something growing. So it did get her out there to pick seeds and package them up. And then her big sister offered them for sale. Her friends. Yes, I hadn't thought about that, but yeah. So it doesn't have to be a garden, but that was something that was fun for them that I thought would continue. It didn't, but it was for the moment. It was, a very fun, enterprising, activity generated in the yard, which was great.
But it's
Awesome.
literally planting the seeds for later. Like they're getting this experience to what it's like to do. And he, I was going to add something now. I forgot what it was. But he even did market research on it. Like he went to a couple of grocery stores to see how quick the microgreens. They went to one of those stores and the microgreens they're like, we can't keep them on the shelf. Like people just want them. And so like he was getting some of the information. He's been researching. He'd come home from school every day and just I was learning more about microgreens than I cared. But again, it's as moms, I feel like it's our jobs to expose them. I don't necessarily have to be the expert in them. I mean, I'm sending him Patrice's way to ask some questions. Like our job is just to facilitate and help them. So it's not, as sometimes we put this burden on ourselves. And so we're just here to expose and support. We don't have to be the experts. I'm having him have a phone call with Patrice to get more information because he's going to do a summit talk on some of this stuff. But so it's just our job to be that facilitator and take some of that stress off of us. As we're doing these things, that we don't have to be the know-it-all. We just have to be the person that connects them with someone that they could help them.
Well, and that's
And
what we're saying. How does the mom balance this? Because here's a new project, can look huge, can get
Well,
expensive.
it did look huge, but he was taking on so much of himself that what I was actually doing wasn't that much. Like I was just checking on him, asking a couple questions, but it was something because he was so interested on, I didn't have to do much. And so that's the beauty of it, is when we're just keep exposing them until they find the thing that they're interested in, then they take it on. But if they're not interested, it doesn't work, because like he had other ideas that kind of fizzled, right? But this one was something that he just kept working on his own. Like I didn't have to do much. And so I think it's just exposure that really helps.
Yes.
And I think something too, if you let your kids do that research, it's really empowering. you know,
Mhm.
even if they run into problems on some project, you know, I encourage them like to step back and look at it from all different angles, and then let them, you know, once they've clearly defined it, let them do the research to find out their solutions. And it's really empowering. And
It really is.
yeah,
I
If
love a
you
little
if you
fairy
come at them,
gardens.
yeah, if you come at them with questions rather than solutions, that encourages them to use their imagination and their brain power and what they connect with most naturally to find the solutions for them.
So as we are coming towards the close of our hour, and moms who are listening to this and in the replay, and as we all go off thinking about this, what's one thing I should really hold in thought here as we go off to make some spring plans? I mean, what we're doing in the spring is going to pay off for summer or for fall, but what's one thing you'd like us to remember around this topic?
give your kids like lots of time to explore in the garden. Don't be rushing it and you know, pressure. Let them explore. There's so much going on. Like, give them time to explore and really enjoy their time gardening and being out in nature.
I agree. I would say, don't underestimate the power of the connection that's made when you're outside with them, and you don't have to be doing the same things as them. So if you've got if you want to take your lunch or your dinner outside, or if you want to, you know, if you've got your little raised garden space or whatever, and you're working out there and they're playing or whatever, you know, they're connecting in their own way to the world around them, as are you, but you are also having a shared experience. It's like the parallel play. And so I would say to not underestimate that, because you don't know what's going on with them and all of those connections and memories that are being made within their experience. And so, I mean, I can just think back to my childhood and all the time I spent outside, and it's formative. And so they need to have that time, like Pat says. But if they can be out there with you, then they are connecting with you as well. And that is so needed right now.
Yes. I mean, you know, yeah, a family connection outside, but you don't all have to be doing the same thing or even conducting what they're doing. It's
Yeah,
just,
definitely not. Yeah.
just being
Which
outside.
is why I'll just reiterate that making that bucket list together for the summer and getting, you know, a little bit of what everyone wants to do. And when you schedule in those activities, then it kind of frees up your mind that, okay, well, we already have that planned. We're going to do that together. Like, I can use this time for something else. You know, like, I don't have to feel guilty that I have to, for instance, if you're a work at home mom, like, you can plan out those activities knowing that they're coming up, and you can use your other time then to do what you need to do with household activities or things, and take that load off your mind. So plan that in, and making sure that you're doing a bucket list together of things you all want to do, not just one person, or that you're planning everything. Get some ideas flowing from each of you, and create your summer together outside.
Yeah, making it pleasant. I just remember I had to mow lawns. I was in charge of the weeding as a kid. You know, being out, I like to be outside and I like to do all that. I want things to look nice, but being outside was always about chores. Unless we got off to play and could go do mud pies and build forts and stuff. But so much of being around the yard is yard work, not necessarily yard fun. So I love the spin on all of this, and really thinking, like, I think, Michelle, you're the one who said making it a mindful experience of, you know, why you're doing this, but not necessarily to telling your kids, but
Well, sometimes we actually do share those ideas with them. They get it a little bit more. And as I think it was Jenna saying, or I forgot who said it, but just that we're doing, so I maybe it's Pat, that they have that love of nature and then they want to preserve it as they become adults. And so I think even sharing those intentions, I mean, they're smart ones. They know when we're up to something.
I just want to just kind of throw this out there, but you see it every now and then, and maybe it came up during the pandemic too, the kids actually need to have their hands and feet in dirt well, not just, we talked about regulating their nervous system, but as far as health wise, I think it has to do with bugs and all of that.
Yeah.
That is something that we're not getting by being more inside, as you were saying, Jenna.
Yeah. Susan just brought up the concept of earthing. If you haven't heard of the term earthing or grounding, look that up. But to your point, Tracy, getting our hands in the dirt, kids' hands in the dirt actually boosts their immune system. And there's a recent book out on that, and I cannot remember its name, but I can post it in the replay for the session. But yeah, boosting immune systems, we all need that. Children absolutely need that.
Yes, both the other book that was mentioned earlier too. Let's make sure that goes into the comments for the replay so people can pick up the books, because chat will disappear. So that would be the one that both Patrice and Jenna mentioned is a really great book. That would be great.
Last Child in the Woods.
And plus the books that you've written about all these topics. And I know that you're prolific on this subject that you love. And I just, this topic makes you feel good. Because you know what? It doesn't have to cost a lot of money. I mean, more beyond just going to the park, which is a good thing. I mean, going to the park and walking your dog on all of that is a very good thing. The other thing that we'll be then putting along with the replay, we mentioned that tomorrow is May Day, but in 14 days is Mother's Day. And we have a nice catalog with all the book links in that too, and things that are really great gifts for mothers that come from our speakers. So everybody, we are mom, grandma experts in our particular field and love sharing that to make, our mom community feel supported, but also you're getting access to these people that maybe you never even heard of what they're doing, but you get to have access to them and really benefit from what they're doing. And you know what? They're in the same boat as you, having to balance kids and their passions and the things that they love. So we do want to wish you a happy Mother's Day coming up as we celebrate what we've been doing as moms, getting you a sense of support and community here at Workshops for Moms. And then I just do want to put a plug in here that this activity on one Sunday a month, and we liked the end of the month. However, next month would be Memorial Day weekend. So that we decided would not be the greatest time to have it. So we're going to meet a week early. So it'll be on May 21st at 5 o'clock Pacific. And that panel is going to be covering the issues of being a mompreneur. So the balancing act of having your own business with kids and all of that goes into that. And then we'll also follow that with a women's circle, which is going to happen here. A nice calming way, kind of end the month and look forward to the next month and all of its activities. And also on Sunday, everybody kind of relaxed after the weekend as we go into the next week. So we do invite you, you can just stay on this link and have people joining in at 6 o'clock for our women's circle. And that is led by Michelle. And she has just been finding that is a great way to make connection and community in our moms community. A little self-care, just an hour for yourself. We really encourage you to stay with us for that. And then don't forget, on Thursdays, we bring you your mom hour, a midweek pick-me-up. And this week it's on May 4th. So may the 4th be with you, and may you be with us at 5 o'clock p.m. And we alternate between mornings and afternoons, trying to make it so that it's a good time for somebody in all these different regions. And we even have people participating from outside the country. So we really, really love connecting with you. And we hope that you'll connect with us in the Facebook group too. So that's Workshops for Moms. And right now we are getting ready for Mother's Day, as we said. So there's a quote every day to make you feel good, to celebrate who you are and the awesome job that you're doing raising kids. So we applaud you and we love you, and we're sending you a big hug and a round of applause for being moms. And our panelists, this was awesome. And you make me feel a little bit less than a pitiful gardener, but
I'm with you, Tracy.
we really, really just appreciate what you're sharing with us. And this is here, as a replay. You can go back and listen to it as many times as you want. And please connect with these wonderful women. We will put links there for you in the Facebook group and in the replay, so you can actually reach out and have a conversation and talk about what's going on in your family and what you would like to accomplish around the topic of kids and gardening and nature play and being outdoors as a restorative and connecting issue with your families. So with that, I think what we'll do is probably pause recording, maybe end this one, Michelle, because then we want to stay on the link, but how do you want to handle that?